Hello and welcome to Nothing But the Truth. 24 hours after yesterday's results and a night of reflection, how does the Congress party view the situation it faces? That's the key issue I shall discuss today with the outgoing Parliamentary Affairs Minister, a 9-time Lok Sabha winner, and now the senior-most MP in the House, Kamal Nath. Mr. Kamal Nath, you must be hugely relieved to have won Chhindwara, but the truth is, you're one out of just 3 cabinet ministers, and I'm talking of 28 altogether, who've actually survived. All the others have been wiped out. So today, do you feel a bit like the last man standing?
Well, of course, there is a feeling of there's a low, and I have seen times when Mrs. Gandhi lost her own election in '77. I was a member of the Youth Congress at that time. I saw Sanjay Gandhi losing. I saw Rajiv Gandhi losing from 415 coming down to the 190s. But this time the low and the profound loss which we've had, the loss is nothing but profound. The profound loss we've had obviously makes one really reflect on what we did and what we did not do.
I'll come to that in a moment's time because that's a critical part of our discussion. But first I want to just discuss with you the scale of what's happened. You're reduced to just 44 seats. In 10 states, you didn't win a seat at all. Nowhere in the country you've gone into double digits, and there's a real possibility that if the Speaker doesn't want to, you won't get the official designation of opposition. Has Mr. Modi fulfilled his claim of Congress Mukt Bharat?
I don't think so. This was a slogan given by then in 1977 we lost, and this was a slogan I've heard many times before.
But in 77 you had 145 plus seats. This time you're 100 and more less.
We must remember that at that time there were sayings that you can never, Congress is finished, Congress is doomed. I've heard all this before. The Congress is neither doomed, neither finished. The Congress will be live and kicking as soon as we are able to recover from this and are able to get our act together again.
But you know, when you say as soon as we're able to recover, it's an incredible act of recovery that's needed, because just look at the scale again. You've lost 6 out of 6 in Bombay, 7 out of 7 in Delhi, all 25 in Rajasthan, all 26 in Gujarat, 46 out of 48 in Maharashtra, 78 out of 80 in UP. There are parts of India where Congress virtually doesn't exist.
In 1977, we had no seats except one in North India. The only seats we had were from South India. There was nothing in Maharashtra, nothing in Rajasthan, nothing in UP. All that was always there. I've seen it all. So I have the confidence, and I am very confident that a government which is coming, a party which is coming, on the basis of all these promises, on the basis of all these acquisitions, has built up hopes which the people will see through in a short while.
Well, that's another matter. Let's leave that aside. We don't know the answer to that. But the joke about Congress today is that you don't even have enough MPs to create a cabinet. You've got 44. Dr. Manmohan Singh's government was 79. The other joke is that in UP alone, Narendra Modi has 150% more MPs than you have nationwide. Those are the jokes on Twitter. That's the extent to which Congress has crashed.
But that's true. These are numbers. That's true. And I said this in the beginning, that our numbers are very, very poor. Now, once that be so, repeating them in one form or the other doesn't get us anywhere.
Would you accept that you've suffered a debacle?
Of course we've suffered a debacle, a terrible debacle.
The worst possible?
It could not be worse than this.
Had you at all expected it would be so bad?
No, I thought we would not be doing well, but I never thought we'd do this badly, nowhere near this badly.
Where did you think you would come in?
I thought we would be slightly above 100.
So actually, you're more than 50% below
Absolutely.
What you thought.
Absolutely. I was wrong in my calculations, especially about the south and about the west. Maharashtra, Gujarat, Karnataka, was Andhra Pradesh.
In all these areas, you expected to do better?
I expected to do better, maybe by 5 seats or 10 seats. I expected to do much better.
What do you think went wrong? Why has Congress suffered this debacle?
Well, I think, the Congress, politics has changed, but the Congress hasn't. And The Congress has to now change along with the politics which has changed. Every 5 years, every decade, the voters change. The aspirations of the voters change. We must recognize today that today in India we have the largest aspirational society on this planet. And unless you are connecting with them, unless they look at you with hope, they can look at you with faith and trust. You can bring in any kind of legislation. You can do any good thing. We did a huge amount of good things.
You know, you're saying something very interesting. You're saying India changed, and India changed sizably and dramatically. Congress didn't change. Congress, therefore, was years behind India.
Yeah, absolutely, I'm saying that.
Was Mrs. Gandhi aware? Was Rahul Gandhi aware of this?
Well, they were aware. I think by the time we got aware, it became too late. Because with an aspirational voter, with a voter with growing disposable incomes in rural India, the aspirations of the rural youth are different. Their perceptions of politicians and politics and political parties are
And
different.
you were totally out of sync with the youth of India and with their aspirations.
That is apparently so, because look at the drubbing we've got.
You know, you laid a lot of store behind strategies and policies like right to food, Lokpal, the land acquisition bill, the right to education. Congress really genuinely believed that this would get you 200 seats. You ended up by 44. Was your thinking in terms of what the people wanted wrong? Was your strategy and your policies wrong?
This was a minimum requirement what the people wanted. Now, by meeting the minimum requirements of people, you don't get votes. When with all these bills, we brought in the right to information. People said this we should have in any case. What is the big deal? We brought in land acquisition. People said, what's the big deal? But there was the flip side to it. Those who weren't benefited by the land acquisition said, you brought the wrong legislation. Let's take the rural employment guarantee scheme we had. The farmer got against this because he said that agricultural labor is now costing so much more. And there were big banners in some places that jab tak Manrega rahega, tab tak kisan marega. So while you were benefiting one lot, you were benefiting the weaker sections. The other sections were all going against you.
You're saying a very interesting thing. You're saying you got caught in a sort of cleft stick. Some of the things you did, which you were proud of, people said this should have happened anyway.
Yeah.
We're not going to give you any benefit for this.
Absolutely.
This should have happened.
Yeah.
And others who didn't like it punished you for doing it.
Absolutely.
So you neither got any benefit, worse still, you got punishment.
And also, all these schemes, the state governments of different parties propagated as their own. There was a communication failure.
So where there was credit, they took the credit.
Where there was credit, they took the credit. Like our pension schemes, our Anganwadi scheme, our Asha scheme, our Manrega scheme, our road schemes.
So here, if others took the credit for what you've done, are you also saying you failed to communicate?
Absolutely. I must say this, that we have not. India, in the last 10 years, India saw the largest social programs in the history of mankind.
But Congress still got defeated.
Absolutely, 244 seats.
And therefore you failed to communicate.
Absolutely.
And worse still, people felt that these programs should have been happening anyway. They weren't going to give you benefit for them, and others punished you. What about Telangana? You genuinely believed after August last year that Telangana was going to win you seats. You hoped that you would get the majority of the 17 seats in that new state. You've ended up with 2, the same as BJP and TDP, who weren't considered to be even proponents of Telangana. Telangana backfired, didn't it?
Telangana backfired. Absolutely. I have no hesitation in saying so, because the people in Telangana never thought you gave them Telangana, where the people in Simandra thought you had bifurcated the states. And I believe this, that if you have to separate a state, you cannot do it combatively. You have to do it with consent and consensus.
So the whole emphasis on Telangana was a waste of time.
No, I think it was the longest demand of any state in the history of our country.
But it yielded no product and benefit.
It got us no politics.
It in fact cost you.
It's cost us, absolutely.
You paid a price for Telangana.
United Andhra Pradesh gave us 33 seats last time.
And now you've ended up with probably 5 or 6.
We landed up with 2.
Let me put something else to you. You went into the elections with people viewing your government as weak and believing that it was paralyzed by indecision. Whatever the truth may be, and that's another story, but that image of weakness, of indecision, of indecisiveness, would you accept that also cost you?
Well, our government should have spoken out much more, undoubtedly, because every ministry, every minister should have spoken out, including me, I'm not disassociating myself from it, much more on programs, because what we were doing, what we were delivering, what was being implemented
Was never known.
was not known the way it should have been known.
So, if speaking out was something that cost you, then was the Prime Minister's silence particularly expensive?
I think the Prime Minister should have come out more and talked of 2G, why the decision was taken not to auction it. Only because we were transferring what should have come to the government in an auction to the people of this country so they could have cheap phones. It's the process which went wrong.
In fact, on 2G, it wasn't just the process went wrong, it wasn't just his silence. The Prime Minister came up with an explanation which was the compulsion of the coalition, and people felt this simply shows him up as weak. It shows up the government as complicit in corruption. Would you accept that even some of those explanations were the wrong
Well,
ones?
some of the explanations really did not connect with the people, did not go down well with the people. There's no harm saying that, because that is now what is flowed out of. These results have flowed out of what has happened.
In fact, you ended up looking either like a government that was corrupt or a government that was unable or was unwilling to tackle corruption. Once again, that image cost you.
You see, people did not even understand, and we couldn't make people understand what presumptive loss was. There was no loss. Now, when we go into the concept of preventive loss, it has no limits.
But you know, the problem is not only did people not understand presumptive loss, you made no real effort to explain it either.
I agree with you.
And so the net
We
result was,
failed in communication.
but
we
it was
failed
worse.
to connect.
But here, when you failed to communicate, you left the clear impression, in some minds you left proof that you were corrupt.
That could have been a conclusion. It could be a natural conclusion, but not necessarily the conclusion.
What about the relationship between the Prime Minister and Mrs. Gandhi? Many people felt that, in fact, Mrs. Gandhi had real power, but without any authority. The Prime Minister had position without any power. The net result was people felt this was an unhappy relationship which weakened and emasculated the Prime Minister.
It's absolutely wrong. I worked in government, and I worked in high levels of government, and I must tell you, Mrs. Sonia Gandhi had no interference. She never exercised any authority or power in the functioning of government. But as a member, as the president of the Congress party, as the chairman of the UPA, she was concerned about programs
But this
which the
impression,
government would have to undertake.
but the impression was never countered by your government, and people concluded the power lay with Sonia Gandhi behind closed doors in 10 Janpath, and she's not accountable.
Well,
The Prime Minister in 7 Racecourse Road only has position, but he's weak, and you did nothing to counter that impression.
Well, I think that could be correct, because this is being talked about today. But I must say it as
You accept that. You accept that.
I accept that, but I must say it as emphatically as I can, that this was all simple rubbish.
One other thing. So far, we've talked about how your policies, your strategies backfired. Telangana in particular, how some of your right-based legislation never got you the benefit you hoped for. We've talked about the image of the government and how that was counterproductive, whether it was the weakness or the corruption, or whether it was simply the belief that Sonia is powerful and the Prime Minister is not. I want to now explore with you briefly whether your party also has a share of responsibility in this debacle that you faced. As I look at your party, I say to myself, does it really have the structure of a party that can win popular elections? After all, 5 of your 12 general secretaries have never won a Lok Sabha election. Of your 22 CWC members, only 6 come from the Lok Sabha. The rest come either from the Rajya Sabha, which is not directly elected, or they don't belong to any house at all. And the CWC and your general secretaries are supposed to be your connect between the party and the people. And I suggest to you that these people themselves don't have a connection with the people. How can they connect the party?
Well, factually, those numbers may be correct. But then there is all levels of experience which are needed. And these all levels of experience do come into play at some point or the other.
But did this level of experience get prominence where in fact you should have given prominence to people's capacity to campaign and people's capacity to connect with the people? That got buried somewhere.
Well, that will be one of the points to reflect on when we reflect on the drubbing we've got.
You therefore do agree that the Congress party needs to look deeply into the sort of people who become general secretaries and who become members of the CWC.
Well, I think Congress party must look at the structural aspects of its own structure. Structural aspects of how we award tickets. How do we appoint people? Should they be elected or not elected? All these things need to be gone into, because the politics where people come from a state and to Delhi and say the state is with us, and go back to the state and say Delhi is with us. This is the politics which has hurt us the most.
And this is something that must be a priority if you're going to recover from what virtually looks like A wipeout?
Well, it's very important for us to recognize what's gone wrong. Because if we do not even know what's gone wrong, we'll never be able to correct it.
Are critical people in your party making that recognition?
Well, everybody is thinking now, reflecting on his own. But I suppose in party forums, these issues will come up.
Mr. Kamal, let's take a break at that point. When I come back, I want to turn and question you about Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi, their role in all of this, and more importantly, their responsibility. We'll be back in a moment's time. Stick with us. Welcome back to Nothing But the Truth and an exclusive interview with the outgoing Minister of Parliamentary Affairs, Kamal Nath. On Friday afternoon, very, very briefly, Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi appeared in front of the press. They must have been there for a total of 2 or 3 minutes, full stop. They refused to take any questions. They spoke peremptorily, and then they left. And the people of India were stunned. They said, at this moment of utter debacle, we expect the Congress President and Vice President to be more forthcoming, more open, to be more self-critical. But they spoke in 2 sentences and left. Does that not suggest that they are in denial, or at least in shock?
No, it doesn't suggest they are in denial. It suggests that 1 hour after the results or 1 hour before the results, they really do not feel like going into issues. So what are the questions to be asked?
Were they in shock?
Well, they must have been in surprise.
In shock, actually.
Well, whether you want to call it surprise or shock, I'd say they were in surprise, because as much as I was surprised, they would have also been surprised.
Let me quote to you one of the 3 sentences Rahul Gandhi spoke in front of the press. He says, I hold myself responsible for what happened. And people say, all right, fine, what next? If you hold yourself responsible, will you resign?
No, responsibility doesn't mean resigning. Responsibility also means engaging in what went wrong.
He has been engaging for 5 years.
No, that's absolutely wrong. He only came into the forefront in the last 8 months. Let's not get these facts wrong. Because I've answered this before in another forum. Rahul Gandhi came into the forefront 8 months ago.
Let me put it like this. All over the world, when a party leader leads his party to such a debacle, he accepts responsibility, resigns, so that someone else with a cleaner record can take over. When a cricket captain leads his country to a series defeat, he resigns, he's removed, a new person takes over.
Cricket is not politics.
Why should it be different for Rahul Gandhi?
Well, politics is not cricket, and cricket is not politics. So, having said that, let me say that Rahul Gandhi, when he accepts the responsibility, he accepts the responsibility also of trying to put things together. And if the party wants him, and the party...
Why do you say if? That's an interesting way of phrasing it.
I'm saying because that's a reality.
You mean, will the party have a chance to choose whether they want him or not? Because that's critical.
I think, in all the talks I've had with so many people over the last 24 hours, everybody wants him.
It's being suggested by sources that at your CWC meeting on Monday afternoon, Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi may offer to resign. If they do...
I don't know. This is a if, which you're saying, if they offer to resign, if this happens. I'm afraid to answer this question prefaced with a if is just not possible.
I'll tell you why this is a double whammy for the Congress. If they don't offer to resign, people will think they're stubborn, they're sticking to their position, they don't want to leave even though they've brought the party down to its knees. If they do actually offer to resign, people will say, it should be accepted because these people haven't got the capacity to revive the party. They are losers either way. Therefore, surely their utility for Congress has now diminished.
It's not, and you use the word if in the last 100 seconds 6 times. So I don't think there is any if in this. I don't think they should resign. And I think they
Is that Kamal Nath, the politician, speaking honestly, or are you saying it because in Congress you can't say anything else?
No, of course, I would have said it. I really don't think they should resign. I really think
both of them, this applies
both of them should not. And I feel, and I strongly feel, that they should now get all state units together. They should get party people together and do some serious introspection, reflection, and how do we really change with the politics of this country.
Are you sure Congress won't appoint yet another A.K. Antony committee, as you've so often done, and shelve the issue?
I think the time of committee is over. What we need to do is to really have a very interactive and engaging session which brings it out, not having 1,000 people, but having at least 40, 50 people, 60
Do you think you need a fresh election for the Congress president? An election for the vice president, which didn't happen when Rahul Gandhi got appointed? Do you think that's the starting point?
No, that will happen. That's provided in our constitution. That will happen in any case.
It didn't happen for Rahul Gandhi when he became vice president.
No, because there is no provision of a vice president. It's the prerogative of the president to appoint a vice president.
But now that you're virtually building yourself up from the floor, do you think you need to go through these essential stages so that once again the Congress knows that democracy internally is happening?
I think there's no need for that. There is an election. There is an election to the Congress president. It has happened in the past. It will happen in the future.
Do you think it should happen nearer the time now? Sooner?
Well, it's due. I think it's due sometime this year in any case.
It hasn't happened for at least 10 years.
Oh no, come on. It happened 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
No, it hasn't happened for 10 years.
No. It's now the election commission compels you to have an election.
One last question. Do you think the time has come for Priyanka Gandhi to play a bigger role?
Well, I'd like to see her play a bigger role. She has helped Rahul Gandhi, and it's for her to decide and the family to decide what kind of role she'll play.
But Kamal Nath is saying he personally wants her to play a bigger role.
I would like to see her. Why not? Why not? Because this is a time when everybody should participate, everybody should engage, everybody should chip in.
One last question. After the taunts Shehzade and Maa Beti Ki Sarkar, is the Congress party worried about the treatment of Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi now that they're going to be in opposition and Mr. Modi will be Prime Minister?
I don't think so, because every Prime Minister must rise above these things. And if you have a Prime Minister who does not rise above these things, well, the country will see through it.
What about Robert Vadra? Are you worried about Robert Vadra?
I'm not worried because I don't think he's done anything wrong. It'll all come out. If there was anything, do you think in the last 2 years it won't have exploded?
Whenever Congress starts making genuine, serious efforts to revive and recover,
it always wins again very quickly.
No, do you think you have to begin by distancing yourself from Robert Vadra, because that was part of the baggage that dragged you down?
There was nobody who was close with him. The party, he was not engaged with the party.
He's the son-in-law of Sonia Gandhi, the brother-in-law of Rahul Gandhi, the husband of Priyanka Gandhi. What do you mean there's no one who's close to him?
But I'm saying there is no one in the party. It's not that he participates in party affairs.
His shadow looms over your party.
I don't think there is any shadow. I think that's a completely wrong perception.
So Vadra wasn't part of the problem?
No, he was not part of the problem at all.
And you're absolutely confident that the Rahul Gandhi who looks like a broken plate today, and I'm using that metaphor deliberately, can actually put this party together?
I think so. He can.
How many weeks, months do you plan to give him before the party decides it ain't working?
Ah, come on. I don't think that at all.
So he's got a carte blanche?
Of course, he's there. And the people in our party want him.
All right, Kamal, a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much indeed.